The metal corridors of the Vreth battlecruiser echoed with celebration. Purple-skinned soldiers lined the walls, their 3 eyes gleaming with victory. They had done what no other crew had accomplished in 3 long years of war. They had captured a human soldier alive. Commander Throlix stood tall on the observation deck, watching as the guards dragged the prisoner through the ship. The human looked so small compared to the towering Vreth warriors. He wore torn combat gear, and blood stained his dark hair. His hands were bound with energy cuffs that glowed blue against his skin. Yet despite his injuries, the human walked with his head up, his expression calm. "Look at him," Throlix said to his second officer. "So weak, so fragile. And yet these creatures have held us back for years." The prisoner was brought to the central processing area. A crowd of Vreth soldiers gathered to see the human up close. Many had never seen one before. They had only heard stories from the battlefield. Tales of human stubbornness and their refusal to surrender even when facing certain death. Intelligence officer Kellanara approached with a data pad in her clawed hands. She was smaller than the other Vreth, but her mind was sharp. She had been studying humans since the war began, learning their language, their culture, their weaknesses. "State your name and rank," she demanded in perfect human English. The prisoner looked at her with dark eyes. For a moment he said nothing. Then in a quiet voice he spoke. "Corporal Dong-Yun." "Serial number 773921. Kellanara typed the information into her pad. "What unit?" "Name, rank, and serial number," Dong-Yun repeated. "That's all you get?" A guard struck him across the face. The human's head snapped to the side, but he made no sound. When he straightened up, there was blood on his lip, but his expression had not changed. Throlix stepped forward. He towered over the human, nearly twice his height. "You will tell us everything. Your ship positions, your supply routes, your defense codes, or you will die slowly." Dong-Yun met the commander's gaze. "Then I die slowly," the Vreth soldiers muttered among themselves. Some seemed impressed by the human's courage. Others were simply amused. Throlix felt his pride stung. This tiny creature dared to defy him in front of his entire crew. "Take him to the detention level," Throlix ordered. "Maximum security. I want guards posted at all times. Kellanara, prepare your interrogation equipment. We start tomorrow." The guards dragged Dong-Yun away. The human did not struggle. He simply walked, his eyes taking in every detail of the ship. The corridors, the guard positions, the security panels, everything. They brought him to the lowest level of the ship, where the brig was located. The cell was small, just 3 meters by 3 meters. The walls were smooth metal, and a force field blocked the entrance, crackling with purple energy. Inside, there was only a metal bench attached to the wall. The guards threw Dong-Yun inside and activated the field. They stood outside, watching him. The human sat down on the bench and closed his eyes as if preparing to sleep. "That's it?" One guard said. "He just sits there? What did you expect?" Another replied, "Humans are weak. He knows he's beaten." But one guard, younger than the others, felt uneasy. "I heard stories about human soldiers. They say humans don't know when they're beaten. They keep fighting even when it's hopeless." The others laughed. "Those are just stories. Look at him. Does he look dangerous?" Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, on Earth's military command station, alarms were blaring. Commander Haijin sat in the operations center, her face pale as she read the report on her screen. Her hands were shaking. "No," she whispered. "Not him." Admiral Tae-yun entered the room, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. "Commander, I received your emergency signal." "What's happening?" Haijin turned the screen toward him. "The Vreth captured one of our soldiers 3 hours ago, during the raid on the Andromeda Gate outpost." "That's unfortunate, but not unprecedented," Tae-yun said. "We've lost people before." "Sir," Haijin's voice was barely a whisper. "It's Dong-Yun." The Admiral's expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face. "Kang Dong-Yun?" "Yes, sir." Tae-yun sat down heavily in a chair. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke, his voice tight. Do they know who they have? We don't think so. He used his cover identity. Corporal rank. Standard serial number from the 45th Infantry. How long until they figure it out? Haijin checked her systems. If they run his biometrics through their intelligence database, they'll know within hours. Maybe less. Taeyun stood up quickly. Issue a total communications blackout. Nothing about Dongyun leaves this station. Convene the senior staff immediately. And get me Captain Yuna from Special Operations. Sir, what are we going to do? The Admiral looked out the window at the stars beyond. We're going to mount a rescue operation. Before the Vreth realize what they have in their brig. And if we're too late? Taeyun's jaw tightened. Then God help the Vreth. They think they captured a soldier. They have no idea what's coming. Back on the Vreth ship, Kellanara sat in her office, preparing for the next day's interrogation. She reviewed human psychology files, studying the best methods to break their will. Humans were emotional creatures, she had learned. They could be manipulated through fear, through pain, through appeals to protect their loved ones. She pulled up the prisoner's basic information. Corporal Dongyun, age 28, no family listed, standard infantry training, nothing remarkable, just another soldier. Almost as an afterthought, she decided to run his biometrics through their intelligence database. It was standard procedure, though she expected nothing unusual. The scan would check his retinal pattern, his DNA markers, his vocal signature against any known intelligence files. She initiated the scan and returned to her work. The system would alert her when it finished. It usually took only a few minutes, but minutes passed, then more minutes. The system was still processing. That was odd. A simple identity check should be instant. Kellanara frowned and checked the system status. The computer was searching through deeper archives, accessing files marked with high-level security codes. Why would a simple corporal trigger such a deep search? In his cell, Dongyun sat motionless on the bench. His eyes were closed, but he was not sleeping. In his mind he was counting. Counting the number of guards outside his cell. Counting the seconds between patrol changes. Counting the distance from his cell to the armory he had spotted on the way down. A small smile touched his lips. So slight that the guards would not have noticed, even if they had been watching closely. They thought they had won. They thought they had captured him. They had no idea that the hunt was just beginning. Morning came on the Vreth ship, though there was no sun to mark the time. The lights in the detention level brightened automatically, signaling the start of a new duty cycle. The guards outside Dongyun's cell had changed 3 times during the night. The human had not moved from his position on the bench. Kellanara arrived with 2 armed guards. She carried a metal case containing her interrogation tools. Neural probes. Chemical injectors. Devices designed to cause pain without leaving permanent damage. The Vreth had perfected these techniques on dozens of species across the galaxy. Bring him to interrogation room 3, she ordered. The guards deactivated the force field and entered the cell. Dongyun stood up slowly, stretching his muscles. He offered no resistance as they led him down the corridor to a small white room. In the center was a chair with restraints built into the arms and legs. They strapped him down tightly. Kellanara dismissed the guards and sealed the door behind them. She was alone with the prisoner now. This was how she preferred to work. Fear was more effective when there was no audience, no one for the prisoner to act brave in front of. Corporal Dongyun, she said, walking in a circle around him. You seem like a reasonable man. This doesn't have to be difficult. Just answer my questions and you can return to your cell. You might even survive to see the end of the war. Dongyun said nothing. His eyes followed her as she moved, but his face showed no emotion. Kellanara sighed. Very well. We'll do this the hard way. She attached neural probes to his temples. These devices could read brain activity, detect lies, and if turned up high enough, cause excruciating pain by overstimulating the nervous system. She had broken strong warriors with these tools. A human would not last long. Let's start simple, she said. What was your mission at the Andromeda Gate? Dongyun's eyes became distant, as if he was looking at something far away. Name, rank, and serial number. Kellanara increased the power on the neural probe. Most subjects would scream at this level. Dongyun's jaw tightened, and sweat appeared on his forehead, but he made no sound. Your mission, Kellanara repeated. Name, rank, and serial number. She increased the power again. The human's body went rigid in the chair. His breathing became rapid. But still, he did not speak. For 2 hours, Kellanara continued the interrogation. She tried different approaches: pain, questions about his family, promises of better treatment, threats of execution. Nothing worked. The human simply repeated the same words over and over, or said nothing at all. Finally, frustrated and exhausted, Kellanara called for the guards. Return him to his cell. We'll try again tomorrow. As the guards led Dongyun away, Kellanara noticed something strange. Despite the intense neural stimulation, the human was walking steadily. He should have been barely conscious, his nervous system overwhelmed. Yet he moved with control, his eyes still alert and observant. She returned to her office and sat down at her computer. The biometric scan from last night should have finished hours ago. She pulled up the results and froze. The screen was filled with warnings. Red text flashed across the display. Priority alert, maximum security clearance required, identity confirmed. With shaking hands, Kellanara entered her security codes. The file that opened made her 3 hearts beat faster. The prisoner was not Corporal Dongyun of the 45th Infantry. That was a cover identity, one of many in the file. His real name was Captain Kang Dongyun, Special Operations Division. Calcine, the harvester. Kellanara began reading the file, and with each line her fear grew. Operation Silent Night. Kepler 442b, 1 human operative infiltrated a Vreth forward base. 2,000 soldiers stationed there. 0 survivors found. Base completely destroyed. Only evidence was security footage of a lone figure moving through the darkness. Operation Crimson Tide supply convoy raid. 7 Vreth cargo ships vanished without sending distress signals. Wreckage found 3 weeks later. All crew dead. Ships stripped of weapons and technology. Operation Ghostwind, colony assault on Proxima Station. Vreth garrison of 500 elite troops. The harvester entered alone at night. By morning, the garrison commander had surrendered the entire station. Later interviews revealed the troops were so terrified they refused to fight. The list went on. 17 major operations across 3 years. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of Vreth soldiers killed, and every mission completed by a single human operative working alone. There were reports from Vreth survivors, though few lived to tell the tale. They described a human who moved like smoke through their defenses, who knew their ship layouts better than their own crew, who could disappear in empty corridors and appear behind sentries without making a sound, who fought with a cold efficiency that felt more like a natural disaster than an enemy soldier. The Vreth military intelligence had classified the harvester as a myth, propaganda meant to frighten their troops. But the evidence was undeniable. The human in their brig was responsible for more Vreth deaths than any other single enemy combatant in the war. Kellanara's hands were shaking as she initiated an emergency communication to Commander Throlix. Within minutes, the commander burst into her office, his face showing concern. This better be important, Kellanara. I was in a strategy meeting with— We need to move the prisoner immediately, Kellanara interrupted. Maximum security protocols. Quadruple the guards. And we need to contact High Command. Why? What's wrong? Kellanara turned her screen toward him. Read it. Throlix leaned forward and began reading. His skin turned a darker shade of purple as the blood drained from his face. When he finished, he stepped back from the desk. This can't be real. The harvester is just a story. Human propaganda. Look at the evidence, Commander. The biometric match is perfect. DNA, retinal scan, vocal patterns. It's him. Throlix was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice tight. How long has he been in our brig? 14 hours? And he's been awake this whole time? Yes, sir. He hasn't slept. During the interrogation, I used neural probes on him. He barely reacted. Throlix felt a chill run through his body. What was he doing during the interrogation? I don't understand, sir. Was he just enduring the pain? Or was he doing something else? Kellanara thought back to the session. The human's distant eyes. The way he seemed to be concentrating on something beyond the pain. I'm not sure. Throlix grabbed her computer and pulled up the technical specifications of the neural probes. These devices create a two-way connection with the subject's brain. They read neural activity, but he scrolled through the documentation. They also interface with our computer systems to analyze the data. That means there's a connection between the subject's mind and our network. The implications hit Kellanara like a physical blow. You think he was accessing our systems? Humans have neural structures unlike any other species we've encountered. What if some of them, specially trained operatives, could use that connection in reverse? What if he was downloading information while you thought you were interrogating him? They both turned and ran for the door. Throlix contacted the bridge as they ran through the corridors. Security alert? All stations report. I want a full system diagnostic now. They reached the detention level at a run. The guards outside Dongyun's cell stood at attention, looking confused by the sudden alert. Report? Throlix demanded. Any unusual activity? No, sir. The prisoner has been sitting quietly since he returned from interrogation. Throlix looked through the force field. Dongyun sat on the bench, exactly as before. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and even. But now, looking at him with the knowledge of who he really was, Throlix saw something different. The human wasn't resting. He was thinking, planning, waiting. Double the guards. No, triple them. I want armed patrols on this level at all times. And move him to the maximum security vault on level 9. As the guards moved to carry out his orders, Throlix watched the prisoner. And for just a moment, Dongyun's eyes opened. He looked directly at the commander, and he smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. But it was there. And in that moment, Throlix understood. They hadn't captured the Harvester. The Harvester had let them capture him, across the galaxy. Admiral Taeyun's rescue fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Lieutenant Sora, the tactical officer, immediately began scanning for the Vreth battlecruiser. Contact, she reported. The Crimson Talon, bearing 273, distance 4 million kilometers. Can we reach them before they jump away? Taeyun asked. Negative, sir. They can jump in minutes if they detect us. We're too far out. Taeyun clenched his fists. They had come as fast as they could, but it might not be fast enough. Then Sora's console beeped with an incoming transmission. Sir, I'm picking up Vreth military communications. They're not encrypted. They must think they're far from any human forces. What are they saying? Sora listened, her translation software converting the alien language. Her eyes went wide. Sir, they're requesting emergency reinforcements. They're saying they have the Harvester. The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to look at the Admiral. Taeyun sat back in his chair, his expression grim. Change of mission priorities? We're no longer here to rescue Captain Dongyun. Sir? Sora looked confused. We're here to contain the aftermath. The lights on the Vreth battlecruiser flickered. It was brief, just a fraction of a second, but every crew member noticed. Lights didn't flicker on military vessels. Their power systems were built with triple redundancy, designed to function even during combat damage. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Maltok stared at his displays with confusion. Run a full diagnostic, he ordered his team. Check all power conduits, backup systems, everything. His crew moved quickly, scanning every system. After 20 minutes, they reported back. Nothing wrong, Chief. All systems are functioning normally. Maltok frowned. Then why did the lights flicker? Could have been a minor power fluctuation. Maybe a solar flare interfering with our shields. It was a reasonable explanation. Maltok logged the incident and returned to his work. He didn't notice the small change in his computer system, a tiny piece of code that had been inserted during that brief flicker. A piece of code that was now spreading through the ship's network like invisible smoke dot in the maximum security vault on level 9. Dong-Yun sat in his new cell. This one was different from the first. The walls were reinforced battle armor 20 centimeters thick. The force field at the entrance was twice as strong. 6 guards stood outside instead of 2, all carrying heavy weapons. Security cameras watched him from every angle. Commander Throlix had moved him here 3 hours ago. The vault was designed to hold the most dangerous prisoners, war criminals, and enemy commanders. It had never been breached. Dong-Yun sat perfectly still, his eyes closed, his breathing slow. To the guards watching, he looked like a man meditating or sleeping. They had no way of knowing what was really happening inside his mind. During the interrogation, while Kellanara had been using her neural probes to cause him pain, Dong-Yun had been using that same connection to access the ship's computer network. It was a technique that only a handful of humans in the entire military knew. It required years of training and a specific neural structure that few people had naturally. The neural probe created a connection between his brain and the ship's systems. Kellanara thought information only flowed one way from his mind to her computers, but Dong-Yun had reversed the flow. While enduring the pain, he had been downloading the ship's complete database, schematics, security protocols, crew rosters, guard rotation schedules, weapon systems, everything. Now, sitting in his cell, he reviewed all that information in his mind. He knew every corridor of this ship, every access panel, every security weakness. He knew there were 2,847 Vreth crew members aboard. He knew their duty schedules, their training levels, their equipment. And he knew exactly how to destroy them all. The small piece of code he had planted in the engineering systems was his first move. It was set on a timer, waiting for the right moment. When it activated, it would cause a cascade of small malfunctions throughout the ship. Nothing catastrophic at first, just enough to create confusion and divide the crew's attention. Dong-Yun opened his eyes and looked at the chronometer on the wall. The code would activate in 7 minutes. He stood up slowly and walked to the force field. The guards outside tensed, raising their weapons. "I need to use the bathroom," Dong-Yun said calmly. The guards looked at each other. The senior guard spoke into his communicator. "Prisoner requests bathroom access." "What are your orders?" There was a pause, then Throlix's voice came through. "Denied. He can wait until his next meal cycle." Dong-Yun shrugged and returned to the bench. He sat down and closed his eyes again. The guards relaxed slightly. 5 minutes later, the ship's alarm system began blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the vessel. The guards outside Dong-Yun's cell received emergency communications through their earpieces. "All engineering teams to your stations. We have multiple system failures. Security to Sector 7. We have a coolant leak. Medical emergency on Deck 4? The guards looked at each other nervously. One of them spoke into his communicator. "Command, do we maintain position or respond to emergencies?" "Maintain position," came the immediate reply. "The prisoner is your only concern." But as the minutes passed, the alarms grew more urgent. The ship's lights began flickering more frequently. Temperature control failed in several sections. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone feel momentarily weightless before returning to normal. "All hands, this is the commander," Throlix's voice came over the ship-wide speakers. "We are experiencing technical difficulties. Engineering teams are working to resolve the issues. All other personnel, maintain your stations and stay calm." In his cell, Dong-Yun counted down the seconds. 3 more minutes. 2 minutes. 1 minute, then exactly on schedule. The force field deactivated. The guards stared in shock as the purple energy barrier vanished. Emergency backup power should have activated instantly. But nothing happened. For 3 crucial seconds, they stood frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing. Dong-Yun moved. He covered the distance to the nearest guard in less than a second. His hands, still bound by energy cuffs, struck the guard's weapon, knocking it aside. Then he drove his shoulder into the guard's chest with enough force to crack ribs. The guard fell backward, gasping. The other guards opened fire, but Dong-Yun was already moving, using the fallen guard as a shield. Plasma bolts hit the guard instead of him. In the chaos, Dong-Yun's hands found the control device on the guard's belt. He pressed it against his energy cuffs and they deactivated, now free. Dong-Yun moved like water through the group of guards. He struck pressure points on their bodies that humans had learned from studying Vreth anatomy. 3 quick strikes to specific nerve clusters and a Vreth warrior would lose consciousness. He moved so fast that the guards couldn't track him. Couldn't aim their weapons. In 15 seconds, all 6 guards were on the ground. Either unconscious or gasping in pain, Dong-Yun collected their weapons and communication devices. He stripped one guard of his armor and put it on over his own torn uniform. It was too large, but it would do. Then he dragged the guards into the cell and activated the force field from the outside control panel. Now they were locked inside. He spoke into one of the communicators, imitating a Vreth voice perfectly. Level 9 secure. Prisoner contained. False alarm on the force field. He didn't wait for a response. He was already moving, running down the corridor toward the maintenance access tunnels he had memorized from the ship's schematics. On the bridge, Commander Throlix was dealing with a nightmare. Half the ship's systems were malfunctioning. Engineering teams reported problems faster than they could fix them. Every time they solved one issue, 2 more appeared. Commander, we're getting conflicting reports, his communications officer said. Level 9 says the prisoner is secure, but our camera feeds from that area just went down. Throlix felt ice in his veins. Send a security team to Level 9? Verify the prisoner's location, now? 2 minutes later, the security team arrived at the maximum security vault. They found the guards locked inside the cell and the prisoner gone. All hands, red alert. Throlix's voice boomed through the ship. The prisoner has escaped. He is extremely dangerous. Shoot on sight? Throughout the ship, thousands of Vreth soldiers grabbed their weapons and began searching. They checked every corridor, every room, every storage area. But Dong-Yun wasn't in the corridors anymore. He was in the maintenance tunnels. Narrow passages that ran between the ship's walls. These tunnels were used by repair crews to access critical systems. They connected every part of the ship, and most were too small for the large Vreth soldiers to enter easily. Dong-Yun moved through the tunnels quickly, guided by the map in his memory. He knew exactly where he was going. The ship's armory was 3 decks above him. That was his next target. He needed better weapons and equipment. As he climbed through a vertical shaft, he heard voices below. A Vreth patrol had entered the tunnel system, following his trail. He increased his speed. Pulling himself up hand over hand, he reached Deck 6 and emerged from a maintenance hatch into an empty corridor. According to his mental map, the armory was 50 meters to his left. But between him and the armory were security doors and guard posts. Dong-Yun checked the weapon he had taken from the guard. It was a standard Vreth plasma rifle, charged and ready. He moved to the corner and observed the security station ahead. 4 guards stood outside the armory entrance. He needed a distraction. Looking up, he spotted a fire suppression system on the ceiling. Using the plasma rifle, he shot the control panel. Immediately, foam began spraying from nozzles throughout the corridor. Alarms blared, and the guards moved forward to investigate, leaving the armory entrance exposed. Dong-Yun ran. He covered the distance in seconds, sliding through the foam-covered floor. He reached the armory door and used a security card he had taken from one of the guards. The door opened. Inside, the armory was filled with weapons of every type. Rifles, explosives, combat armor, grenades. Dong-Yun moved quickly, selecting what he needed. Better armor that fit him properly. Additional weapons, ammunition, a belt of grenades. A combat knife. He heard the guards returning, shouting in their language. They had realized what happened. Dong-Yun grabbed one final item, a portable force field generator, and activated it just as the guards reached the door. A blue barrier appeared, blocking their entrance. The guards fired at the barrier, but it held. Commander Throlix stood on the bridge, watching the chaos unfold on his tactical displays. Red markers showed the locations of incidents throughout his ship. A firefight on Deck 7. Disabled security teams on Deck 9. Guards found unconscious in the starboard corridor. And at the center of it all, moving like a ghost through his vessel, was a single human. How many casualties? He demanded. His tactical officer checked the reports. 47 dead, 83 wounded or incapacitated. The numbers are rising, Commander. 47 dead. In less than 2 hours. From one human soldier, Throlix felt rage and fear warring inside him. He had fought in dozens of battles. He had commanded fleets. He had seen entire cities fall. But he had never felt this kind of helplessness. Every trap they set, Dong-Yun avoided. Every ambush he detected and eliminated. The human moved through the ship as if he could see through walls, as if he knew their every move before they made it, because he did know. The ship's schematics, security protocols, everything was in his mind now. Status on the intelligence center? Throlix asked. Sealed and defended, sir. We have 300 elite guards positioned there. Overlapping fields of fire, sensor nets, automated turrets. He won't get through. Throlix nodded, but his confidence was shaken. Nothing had stopped the Harvester so far. Why would this be different? Intelligence Officer Kellanara approached him, her face showing fear. Commander, I've been analyzing his attack pattern. He's moving toward the reactor core. The reactor? But that makes no sense. Even if he sabotaged it, the safety systems would contain any damage. Unless he knows how to disable the safety systems, Kellanara said quietly. He has our complete technical database. He knows exactly how to cause a catastrophic overload. The implications hit Throlix like a physical blow. He's going to destroy the ship. It's standard protocol for human special forces. If they can't complete their primary mission, they deny resources to the enemy. He can't extract our intelligence, so he'll make sure we can't keep it either. Throlix made a decision. Pull half the guards from the intelligence center. Send them to protect the reactor, and increase patrols in all corridors leading there. Sir, that leaves the intelligence center vulnerable. It doesn't matter if the ship explodes. Move them now. As guards rushed to their new positions, Dong-Yun was already 3 moves ahead. He wasn't going to the reactor at all. That was what he wanted them to think. He had left a trail of evidence pointing toward the reactor. A damaged access panel near engineering. A dead guard with reactor schematics pulled up on his datapad. Small clues that would lead the Vreth to the wrong conclusion while they reinforced the reactor. Dong-Yun was moving toward the intelligence center through a different route. He traveled through the waste disposal system, an unpleasant but effective path that the Vreth would never expect anyone to use. He emerged from a disposal chute into a maintenance bay, 2 decks below the intelligence center. The area was empty, all personnel having been moved to defend other locations. Dong-Yun quickly cleaned himself and checked his weapons. Everything was ready. He accessed a computer terminal and began working. His fingers moved across the alien keyboard with practiced ease. He inserted a data drive into the system, one that he had prepared long before this mission. The drive contained a sophisticated program designed to hack Vreth security systems. Within minutes, he had access to the environmental controls for the intelligence center. He studied the floor plan, the guard positions, the security measures. Then he began his attack. First, he shut down the artificial gravity in the intelligence center. The 300 guards suddenly found themselves floating, disoriented, and unable to maintain defensive positions. Their weapons drifted away from their hands. Communications became confused as everyone tried to reorient themselves. Then Dong-Yun filled the room with emergency foam. The same fire suppression system he had used earlier. The thick white foam spread everywhere, making it impossible to see more than a few centimeters ahead. Finally, he cut the main power to the room. Emergency lights came on, but they were dim and flickered randomly. The intelligence center had become a dark, foam-filled, zero-gravity nightmare. Dong-Yun entered through a ceiling vent, dropping silently into the chaos below. He wore a breathing mask he had taken from the armory, so the foam didn't affect him. He moved through the white clouds like a predator, striking guards who couldn't see him coming. He didn't kill unnecessarily. Most guards he simply disabled with precise strikes to nerve clusters or pressure points. They would survive, but they would be unconscious for hours. Only those who posed an immediate threat received lethal force. The elite Vreth soldiers fought bravely, but they were fighting blind. Their thermal sensors were useless through the foam. Their motion detectors picked up movement everywhere as the foam swirled and guards thrashed in zero gravity. Their communications were jammed by the program Dongyun had installed. In 20 minutes, it was over. Dongyun stood alone in the intelligence center, surrounded by floating foam and unconscious guards. He made his way to the central database terminal and activated it. The screen glowed blue in the dim emergency lighting. He inserted his data drive and began the download. The Vreth had collected intelligence for decades. Fleet movements, strategic plans, diplomatic communications, weapons research, colony locations. Everything humanity needed to win the war. The download would take 12 minutes. Dongyun activated the ship's internal sensors, watching for any response. The Vreth would realize what was happening soon. They would come in force on the bridge. Commander Throlix received the alert. "Sir, someone has accessed the intelligence database. They're downloading everything." "Where? From where?" "The intelligence center itself, sir." Throlix felt his heart sink. The human had tricked them. While they defended the reactor, he had gone straight for his real target. "Send everyone. All available forces to the intelligence center. Stop him." But as he gave the order, another alarm sounded. This one was much worse. "Commander, the reactor is showing a critical overload. We have 15 minutes before core breach." Throlix stared at his tactical officer in disbelief. "But he's at the intelligence center. How could he sabotage the reactor?" Kellanara understood first. "He set it up before he went to the intelligence center. Probably planted a program or a physical device when he made us think he was heading there earlier. He created a diversion within a diversion." The commander had seconds to make an impossible decision. Try to save the ship by sending everyone to the reactor? Or try to stop the intelligence download by attacking the intelligence center? He chose survival. "All hands abandon ship. This is not a drill. Proceed to escape pods immediately." Chaos erupted throughout the vessel. Thousands of Vreth soldiers ran for their lives, fighting to reach escape pods before the reactor exploded. Training and discipline broke down as panic set in. In the intelligence center, Dongyun watched the download progress. 80% complete. He could hear the general alarm, the announcement to abandon ship. His plan was working perfectly, but he wasn't done yet. He still needed to escape with the data, and the Vreth would be watching for any escape pods launching from this area. Dongyun grabbed his data drive as soon as the download completed. 100%. He had it all. Now he needed to move. He left the intelligence center and ran toward the nearest escape pod bay. The corridors were filled with fleeing Vreth soldiers, but none tried to stop him. They were too focused on their own survival to worry about one human in stolen armor. He reached the escape pod bay and found it, crowded with Vreth trying to get into the limited number of pods. There were only 20 pods in this bay, and more than 50 soldiers trying to board them. Arguments and even fights broke out as fear overcame discipline. Dongyun didn't hesitate. He moved through the crowd, using the confusion to his advantage. He reached an empty pod and climbed inside just as Commander Throlix's voice came over the speakers. "All hands, the human prisoner is escaping in an escape pod. All remaining weapon systems, target any pods launched from the intelligence center section." Dongyun cursed under his breath. He had hoped to slip away unnoticed, but Throlix was smarter than he had expected. If he launched now, the ship's automated defense systems would destroy his pod before he got a kilometer away. He needed help. He needed his fleet to arrive and provide covering fire. But they were still too far away to help him in time. Then his communicator buzzed. It was a human frequency, encrypted and secure. He activated it. "Harvester, this is Sanctuary. We read your situation. Hold position. Extraction in progress. Dong-Yun felt a wave of relief. Admiral Tae-yun's fleet had arrived. They were coming for him. Outside the Vreth battlecruiser, space lit up with weapons fire. Human warships had dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately engaged the Vreth vessel. Missiles and energy beams flashed between the ships. The Vreth automated defenses, already focused on watching for escape pods, were now divided between multiple targets. It was the opening Dong-Yun needed. Now or never, he whispered to himself. He activated the launch sequence. The escape pod shot away from the dying battlecruiser, its small engines burning at maximum thrust. Behind him, the Crimson Talon was a scene of chaos. 3 months had passed since the destruction of the Crimson Talon. In that time, the war had changed completely. The intelligence data that Dong-Yun had stolen proved to be even more valuable than anyone had hoped. Admiral Tae-yun sat in his office on Earth's military command station, reviewing reports from across human space. Every single report showed the same thing. Humanity was winning. The Vreth Empire supply lines had been exposed by the stolen data. Human fleets now struck at cargo convoys and fuel depots with perfect precision. The Vreth fleets found themselves running low on ammunition, on fuel, on replacement parts. The strategic plans in the database had revealed the Vreth military's intentions for the next 2 years. Every offensive they had planned, every target they had chosen, every secret weapon they were developing, humanity knew it all. There were no surprises anymore. Every Vreth attack was anticipated and countered. Most importantly, the data had shown that the Vreth Empire was not as strong as they pretended to be. Their military was overextended, stretched across too many systems. Their economy was strained by the war effort. Their population was growing tired of endless fighting. The mighty empire was actually fragile, held together by propaganda and fear. Human diplomats used this information to negotiate from a position of strength. They reached out to Vreth colonies that were unhappy with the empire's rule. They offered generous peace terms to Vreth commanders who were tired of fighting. Slowly but surely, the empire began to crumble from within. A knock on the door interrupted Tae-yun's thoughts. "Enter," he called. Commander Hai-jin walked in, carrying a datapad. "Sir, I have the latest update from the peace negotiations." "And?" "The Vreth High Council has agreed to our terms. The war is over. They're signing the treaty tomorrow." Tae-yun leaned back in his chair, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "After 3 years, it's finally done." "Yes, sir. And according to the terms, the Vreth will withdraw from all contested systems, pay reparations, and reduce their military by 60%. It's a complete victory. All because of one man and one mission," Tae-yun said quietly. "The cost-benefit ratio of that operation is almost impossible to calculate. 1 soldier, 14 hours of captivity, and the entire war turned around." Hai-jin smiled slightly. "Speaking of Captain Dong-Yun, you should know that he declined the award ceremony scheduled for tomorrow. He says he's already back in the field, training new recruits." Tae-yun wasn't surprised. He had known Dong-Yun for 10 years, since the captain had first joined Special Operations Division. The man had never sought recognition or glory. He simply did his job with perfect efficiency and then moved on to the next mission. Where is he now? Training facility on Luna Base. He's teaching advanced infiltration techniques to the next generation of Special Forces operatives. Good, we'll need more like him. Just because this war is over doesn't mean there won't be others. Far away on the moon's military training base, Dong-Yun stood in front of a class of 20 young soldiers. They were the best of the best, selected from thousands of applicants to join the Special Operations Division. But they were still raw, still learning. One of the students, a young woman named Ji-won, raised her hand. "Sir, is it true what they say about you? About the Crimson Talon?" Dong-Yun looked at her with his dark, calm eyes. "What do they say?" "That you destroyed an entire battlecruiser by yourself. That you killed hundreds of enemy soldiers. That you walked out of a maximum security prison like it was nothing." The other students murmured in agreement. They had all heard the stories. Some thought they were exaggerated. Others believed every word. Dong-Yun was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I completed a mission. That's all. The methods I used, the tactics I employed, those are what I'm here to teach you. Not the mythology that people build around actions after the fact. Another student, a tall young man named Yunho, spoke up. But sir, how did you do it? How did one person defeat an entire ship full of soldiers? Knowledge, Dong-Yun said simply. I knew everything about that ship before I made my move. I knew their systems, their weaknesses, their procedures. I studied breath physiology for years, so I knew where to strike to disable them efficiently. I understood their culture, so I knew how they would react to certain situations. He walked to a display screen and pulled up a tactical diagram. This is the most important lesson I can teach you. You are not stronger than your enemies. You are not tougher. You might not even be smarter, but you can be better prepared. You can know more. You can think faster and adapt quicker. The students listened intently as he continued. Every mission starts long before you enter enemy territory. It starts with intelligence gathering, with studying your target, with preparing contingencies for every possible outcome. By the time I was captured by the Vreth, I had already studied their ship designs for 2 years. I knew that if I ever ended up on one of their vessels, I would have advantages they wouldn't expect. Jiwan raised her hand again. Sir, weren't you scared? When they captured you, when you were outnumbered thousands to 1. Dong-Yun considered the question. He thought back to that moment when the Vreth guards had dragged him onto the Crimson Talon. Yes, he had been afraid. Fear was natural. Fear kept you alert, kept you from making stupid mistakes. Fear is a tool, he finally said. It sharpens your senses. It makes you careful. But you cannot let it control you. You acknowledge it, and then you focus on your training. You focus on the mission. He looked around at all the young faces watching him. Some of them would become excellent Special Forces operators. Others would wash out of the program. But all of them needed to understand one crucial thing. The reason they call me the Harvester isn't because I'm some kind of superhuman warrior, he said. It's because I'm patient. I prepare. I wait for the right moment. And when that moment comes, I act decisively. That's the secret. There's no magic to it. The class continued for another 2 hours. Dong-Yun taught them about infiltration techniques, about reading enemy behavior patterns, about surviving behind enemy lines. He showed them the same methods he had used on the Crimson Talon, breaking down each decision, each action, explaining the reasoning behind it all. When the class finally ended, the students filed out, their heads full of new knowledge and techniques to practice. Yuan lingered behind, waiting until the others had left. Sir, can I ask you something personal? Dong-Yun nodded. Go ahead. Do you ever think about all the soldiers you killed? Does it bother you? It was a serious question, and Dong-Yun treated it seriously. Yes, every single one. I remember their faces. I remember the sounds, the smells, everything. And yes, it bothers me. If it didn't bother me, I wouldn't be human anymore. Then how do you keep doing it? How do you keep going on missions? Because the alternative is worse, Dong-Yun said quietly. If I hadn't destroyed the Crimson Talon, if I hadn't stolen that intelligence, the war would have continued. More human colonies would have been attacked. More of our soldiers would have died. More families would have lost loved ones. I carry the weight of what I did so that millions of others don't have to. Yuan nodded slowly, understanding. Thank you, sir. For the lesson, and for everything else. After she left, Dong-Yun stood alone in the empty classroom. He walked to the window and looked out at the earth hanging in the black sky above the moon's surface. So beautiful, so peaceful from this distance. But he knew how fragile that peace was, his communicator buzzed. It was a message from Admiral Taeyun. The peace treaty had been signed. The war was officially over. Humanity had won. Dong-Yun allowed himself a small smile. Good. That was good. People could go back to their normal lives now. Children could grow up without fear of alien attacks. Colonies could focus on building instead of defending, but his work wasn't done. There would be other threats, other wars. There always were, and when those threats came, humanity would need people like him. People willing to go into the darkness so others could stay in the light. He thought about Commander Throlix, wondering if the Vreth commander had survived the destruction of his ship. According to the reports, Throlix had been captured by the human fleet, along with hundreds of other Vreth survivors. He was now in a prisoner of war camp, waiting for the peace treaty to arrange his return home. Dong-Yun felt no hatred toward him. Throlix had been doing his duty, just as Dong-Yun had been doing his. They had both been soldiers following orders, fighting for their people. The difference was that Dong-Yun had been better prepared, better trained, and perhaps a little bit luckier. Somewhere in human space, in a Vreth prisoner of war camp, Commander Throlix sat in his cell and wrote in his personal journal. The human guards treated him reasonably well, following the rules of war. They gave him food, water, medical care, but they also kept him under constant watch. Remembering that he had commanded the ship that had captured the Harvester, Throlix wrote his final entry about that mission, trying to understand what had gone wrong. "We thought we had captured a soldier," he wrote in his flowing alien script. "We were fools. We captured a weapon that was already aimed at us. We held the trigger and pulled it ourselves. The humans have warriors unlike any species I have ever encountered. They are not stronger than us. They are not more numerous.